Right.
Okay, we are live. Let's just see here. Okay, hi everyone, we are live, and I'm just going to quickly click this to make sure I've got the right stream, because just give me 1 second. Okay, there we are. We are live. Hi everyone, and welcome to the RTC online conference again. Today's panel is Dragon and Wolf. It's a Dragon and Wolf appreciation panel. And with me today, I have authors Millie Taiden, Julia Mills, Ellis Leigh, C.D. Gorri, Terri A. Wilson, and Godiva Glenn. Thank you, ladies, for being here. Welcome, welcome. I just want to remind everybody that there is the live chat that we're running. So if you have any questions, feel free to pop it into the live chat. I'm going to get to as many of them as I can. Just let me know that if it's for a specific author, then let me know the author in the series so that I can ask them. Other than that, I think we'll start by, I'll have everyone introduce themselves. Tell me a little bit about what you write, where you're calling in from, and generally how you're doing. So let's start off with C.D. Gorri. How are you today?
Hey, everybody. I'm cold. Yeah, we got a little snow today in New Jersey, so we weren't prepared for that. But I'm doing all right. I hope you guys are too. Let's see. I write young adult, urban fantasy, and paranormal romance, and I write wolves and dragons, along with some other shifters. So that's what we're going to talk about.
Thank you. Let's move on. Godiva Glenn, tell us, where are you calling from? What do you write? How are you doing? You need a glass of wine. Can I get you something?
I'm doing really well. I'm up in Asheville, North Carolina, where the weather's pretty good right now. Got some sunshine, a little bit of a chill in the breeze, but really nice. I write mainly my wolf shifters, and I write a lot of other shifters in another series that I have, and I love writing dragons too. Yeah.
Excellent. I love reading them. Let's move over to Terri A. Wilson. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you. Terri A. Wilson. I write mostly paranormal romance. I have a sprinkling of contemporary romance floating around there. And my love, first and foremost, is dragons. Probably always will be dragons. Probably I'm going to be reincarnated as a dragon. That's my wish. And I have some different types of shifters as well. So,
fantastic. Thank you very much, Terri. Millie, how are you doing today, and what do you write, and how are things?
Hi. Well, I'm doing really good. Well, I mean, in a way, I've been baking like crazy, so that's good. But I should be writing instead, so that's not good. Yeah. I write paranormal romance featuring curvy girls. I think one of my most popular series is probably the Paranormal Dating Agency. I love shifters of all kinds. I think my first love will always be wolves, because they mate for life. So that's always a big thing for me. But I've actually kind of like made all my shifters mate for life. Like, they have no freaking choice. Fuck that. Sorry. Yeah. So thank you.
Fantastic. Mate for life. Love it. Ellis Leigh, how are you doing today? What do you write? Tell us a little bit about where you are right now.
Well, I am just outside of Chicago in the northwest suburbs. It's a beautiful day here, about 60 degrees and sunny. So I'm sorry for all the snow for everybody else, because it could have been us. We just missed it, apparently. We're doing fine. Our state's pretty well still on lockdown, so we're home, all of us, all the time. and I write paranormal romance. I dabble in a little sci-fi, but I primarily write paranormal under this pen name. Wolves. I have currently one dragon shifter that I've written, and I am expanding that this year and launching a new series with more dragons because they're just so much fun. But wolves will always be my, my home and where my heart is. But we're gonna go play with some dragons for a while.
All right, that sounds fun. Julia, how are you doing? Tell us a little bit about yourself. Where are you calling from?
Hey y'all, I am on the far, far, far east side of Orlando, just a little ways from Mickey Mouse Land, and it is wonderful here today. I'm sorry for everybody that's cold. I'm really sorry. Come visit when the lockdown's lifted. Come on. It's beautiful here and sunny, and the breeze is nice, and yeah, it's great here. Sorry, my cat thinks she has to be involved. She says hello, but I am most well known for dragon shifters. I guess there's 44 of them in the series, so yeah, I guess I figured that part out. I love them. Have always loved dragons. My mother used to tell a story about me and Puff the Magic Dragon, so I believed he was real, and I believed he lived in our attic. So there you have it. I guess it was meant to be. But yeah, it's everything I write is paranormal romance. I have some, the Dragon Guard series is mostly, just paranormal romance. I have a lot of snark. My female characters are all very sassy. I don't know where they get it from. They tend to have a bad mouth. That could probably be me too. And yeah, we just have a lot of fun. It's serious and fun, and we kill bad guys and save the world. And I have some romantic comedy series as well that are in paranormal. I do write some wolves. Most of the females are all something different, witches or shifters or something. So yeah, I like to play with everything, but I always come back to my dragons. So I just love them so much. So that's me. I think, I grew up in a town with 89 people. So,
wow.
So yeah, I guess imagination, that's where the imagination was born. We had to do something. 89 people, pigs, cows, and cornfields. So there you have it. So that's me.
Fantastic. And maybe some dragons you just don't know about yet.
I'm hoping they were there.
All right. Well, I'm going to start us all off with a question that I'm going to start with Terri on this one. You said that you absolutely love dragons, and if you could be a dragon, you'd love to be a dragon. Tell me, what is it about dragons that you love? Why write them? Why be them?
I like dragons because they're huge and they're big and they fly and they breathe fire. I'm kind of one of those people that I'm always cold for some reason. So the idea of breathing fire, like to be warm, would be awesome. But I think it also goes back to my first love when I was growing up was, like Anne McCafferty and Dungeons and Dragons and the Dark Crystal. I mean, all that high fantasy stuff, that's what I grew up on. And wolf shifters, I probably didn't know much about wolf shifters until like Twilight, even as late as that. The one wolf shifter I knew much about growing up was that old cult movie Werewolf in London. And that was so not like what wolf shifters are now. So I think that's why I always go back to that because of the high fantasy part of it.
All right. Leigh, how about you? Either wolves or dragon, because I think you've written both, but you love wolves, you said. So,
well, I think when I first started writing, I had probably both as drafts, and I started out publishing the wolves first, but I do love both very, very much. I think if I had to pick between wolves and dragons, I'd probably have to go with wolves. but dragons are like right up there, like they're like fighting each other. Yeah, it's they're both a lot of fun to write. I think it's easier to write wolves because I can look up like, a fight between wolves and it's easier for me to describe it. Of course now thanks to Game of Thrones, I can also look up a fight amongst dragons, so it's definitely a lot of fun to like both, but I think the fantasy of dragons is always something that probably pulls at your little kid more,
Okay. All right. CD, how about yourself? Wolves, dragons? Why do you love them? Why do you write
Oh gosh. Well, I love both of them. I've written both of them. I did start with wolves, and I was attracted to the whole werewolf, wolf shifter thing just because I like that they're so alive. I like that they're so earthy and they have this sort of hunger for everything, like this huge appetite for life, for everything, for food, for sex, for love, they're just great to write. These are really powerful characters. And my dragons I love because I just think that a dragon is just, it can be anything, like we can really use our imagination and just go wild with it. And a dragon is just everything that's magical, everything that's mystical, it can be anyone, take you anywhere. So I love both of them and I love writing both of them. And I've written male and female characters as both wolves and dragons. And I love it. And I'm going to be doing this for a while because I love it.
We hope you do. Ellis, how about yourself?
Well, when I started writing, I was writing wolves, and it's my Feral Breed series. There's 6 main books, and it's a big overarching plot that ends in book 6. And during that time, it was primarily wolf shifters, but I dabbled a bit. Like I had witches, I had a necromancer, I had a vampire who showed up, I had a character who was half wolf shifter, half tiger shifter. And I like to bring something of the actual animals into play if I'm going to do something like that. So the tiger shifter had a really interesting backstory because tigers don't mate for life. So I played with all of that. And then when I was doing a spin-off series, it just came up that, I could have a dragon. And when you have a dragon, like there's really not a lot of rules there because there's nothing to base it off of. So I really got to just let my mind go and say, okay, well, if, this person could actually do this and this is actually their life, what would it be like? Are they cold-blooded or hot-blooded? Are they, do they mate for life or do they not mate for life? Is it fated mates or do they choose their mates? Like there wasn't kind of a standard, I guess you'd say. I just got to make it up as I went along, and I love that. Paranormal, even with wolf shifters, everybody's world is just slightly different. There are different rules and different playthings. But dragons you can get to play just that little bit more. So you get to stretch a bit. So they're fun.
Magically delicious, you say. How about yourself? How about Julia? Wolves, dragons, what do you love about writing them?
I love writing shifters. Well, I love the paranormal world because it's not reality. And my characters can do damn near anything I want them to do, as long as I can give a justification. Because readers want that, and that's I have a review that still sits there from my very first book, that a dragon has to weigh more than 2,000 pounds because they're so big. No, because their bones are hollow. If they weigh more than that, how would they get off the ground? See, you have to think about things like that. And how do you come up with that? And how does a 5-foot curvy girl become this huge timber wolf, or things like that are so cool to me, because that's the imagination part of it. And that's the part I get to say, how cool is this? Think about this. And you take people out of their reality and give them something else. Dragons will always be my favorite. They're fierce. They are loyal. They are honorable. And they defend what is good and right in the world, in my humble opinion. And yes, I am a fantasist, and I do look at the world through rose-colored glasses, and I do believe everything is always going to be wonderful, and we all have our happily ever after out there somewhere. So dragons do that for me.
Dragons rock, don't they? Godiva, how about yourself? Dragons, wolves, why do you write them? What do you love about them? Oh, you're just on mute. There we go.
So I have both, but I have to say that I definitely, I'm Team Wolf first. It's interesting because I've always been fascinated with dragons. Growing up, I read a lot of fantasy books. So, you know, I've always had this huge fascination with them. I have a little dragon statue collection and everything. And for whatever reason, when I started writing paranormal romance, I did not even think to write dragons. And then by the time I was kind of considering it, it's like I had an author friend who she writes these amazing, incredible dragons, and she's known for her dragons. And I was like, yeah, I don't know if I want to jump into that pool, you know, like I'm not ready for that pond, the dragon shifter pond. So I started with my wolf shifters, and I mean, I love them. I'll be honest, like the reason I got into wolf shifters, first and foremost, I guess I'm the weirdo whenever I watch like werewolf movies or whatever, and they change into this big, scary, furry beast. And I was like, that's hot. Because I'm weird. Okay. So that's why I started writing wolf shifters. But I mean, aside from that, I love the idea of packs and pack structure. And that's something that I love exploring in my world. This kind of idea of like, you know, small, tight-knit communities that they're like family, but not at the same time. And sometimes like, you know, how would that community survive? I really like that. And I mean, I don't know, I just kind of wanted to write that and in a way experience that, like that tight community. So that's why I lean more towards wolves. But I am gonna try to write more dragons in the future. I've got ideas, and you know what? I'm ready to step into that pond.
All right. I just want to say you are not a weirdo. I too find, you know, when you watch the werewolf change, it's kind of hot. I'm just saying it can be hot. I have a great question from somebody on our live chat, and it's to all the authors. And the question is, for all of you, who is your favorite villain in your novels? Your favorite villain? Let us go down. Julia, let's start with you. Who is your favorite villain in your novels? Tell us which novel it is first, though.
I'm sorry?
Don't forget to tell us which novel it is.
Oh, the book I just published, Savage Protector, is part of Millie Taiden's Federal Paranormal Unit. I always say that wrong. And in it, this storyline is arcing through several stories that will be in FPU. But I created these weird little characters that are the villains. They're a group of 13 brothers, and they're just crazy. I mean, like bald 4 strands of hair. They pirouette, and they make fun, and they taunt and tease the people they're holding captive. And I fell in love with them. It was kind of sad when I killed off a couple of them. I had fun killing them, though. I really do like that part of it. I'm not bloodthirsty, but I do like writing fight scenes. There's so much fun. But yeah, I fell in love with him. And as these go on, we'll find out that they're not the worst villain that's out there. And I can't wait to write him because he's just nasty. And I just love it. I think that's the coolest part of what we do because, you know, we get to kill the bad guy. How cool is that?
That's fantastic. Fantastic. Millie, how about yourself? Who is your favorite villain in your novels? And don't forget to tell us which novel it is.
I think for my dragon series, the Dragon Mates, there was a whole my dragons were divided between obviously good and bad, and the lighter dragons were the good ones and the darker dragons were the bad guys. And the dark dragons were led by this one king, And that one was a lot of fun to write because, you know, they went throughout the whole series. And I had so much fun, I think, with both the good and the bad dragons, because the good dragons were like, my son had given me the idea to use like his he loves anime, so he watches a lot of Dragon Ball Z, and so he was like, you know, he wanted me to make them so that they would whenever they mated, they would like get new powers. So it was a lot of fun, you know, to do that. And then the bad guys, you know, I wanted it to link at the end. And it was interesting. I don't want to spoil the series for anyone, but it was a lot of fun to bring it back to the bad guy at the end, and have them have to find their way there without messing it up. But it was a lot of fun. It's a great series. I love it a lot. I think it's probably one of my favorite dragon series, aside from my dragons in the PDA. It's definitely lots of fun to has been lots of fun to write those.
Okay, thank you. Ellis, how about yourself? Who is your favorite villain of all time in your novel?
So I've written like 50 books, 54, I think, last time I counted. So that, like, I'm sitting here as you're talking going, I don't remember. But there is one, and it's such a stupid, like, reason to have a favorite villain. But in my one, in Claiming His Prize, which is my Dragon Shifter novel in the Feral Breed world, the villain is basically a really bad boss. And anybody who's ever had a really bad boss, like the kind of boss that really just degrades you and destroys the culture, and like you wake up hating the fact that you have to go to work, can probably relate to this guy and can probably cheer with me when he gets his comeuppance. And it's not the most vicious villain. It's not the most violent villain I've ever written. And yet, when you say like your favorite villain, that's the one where I was like, I'm so glad that this person got what they deserved because they were awful. And I probably wrote it when I was having a rough time at work. And,
and you know, everyone can relate to.
Yeah, exactly. Like that's the one that sticks with me because I think we've all eventually at some point in our lives had that boss where you're just like, this person is useless. So
fantastic. Thank you. Terri, how about yourself? Your favorite villain?
A lot of the books I write, like the villain is they're fighting themselves more than outside people. But I was thinking about it. I do have one where it was a human, and it's in this story I wrote called Let the Shadows Fall, which is a historical fantasy, takes place like in the Wild West. And he is in search of like, it's kind of like a Moby Dick kind of story where he's in search of the big treasure. And the big treasure is a dragon egg. And so he actually goes out and finds the dragon egg. And what he doesn't realize is when he brings it home, he also brings home the mama dragon. And she's way not happy about it. But he was the founder of this town. He was the head of everything. And he thought he was like just all that and a cracker. And he turns out that he was a little bit crazy and had some unhealthy mama issues that led to his demise. So I think he was probably my favorite.
Okay, that sounds interesting. Thank you. Godiva, how about yourself? Who is your favorite villain in your novels?
Okay, so this one's actually a little rough for me because there are very few novels that I've written that have like a straight up villain. But I would have to say there's a subplot running through my Nightwolves series involving hunters. And these are people who are looking to not just expose, but also get rid of the supernatural community. And it's interesting because all of my Nightwolves books are meant to be standalones, even though they do have this larger series world connecting them. So it starts off really subtle, where there's just kind of like mentions of these hunters exist, but now it's becoming, it's actually just started to ramp up. My last release, Night Caught, one of my wolves is banished from his pack, and he's out on his own, and he actually gets caught by this group of individuals. And I think that it makes a really good, like, so it's not an individual villain, but it's like this whole thing, this community. So where basically, even if you might kill this hunter or that hunter, but they're still out there at large. And so I'm really looking forward to really developing this storyline. And of course, in the forefront is always going to be the wolves and the packs and their relationship. But in the back, it's like this big bad just kind of lurking. And it's like you don't know when they're going to just kind of like strike and just mess up everything that's going on.
Wow, sounds intriguing. Thank you. CD, how about yourself? Who's your favorite villain, if you have one, in your novels?
Yeah, this is a difficult question for me too, but now that I think about it, which thanks Godiva, because you got me thinking about all my books. From my young adult into my first paranormal romance, it's kind of all the same werewolf pack, the Maconwood pack, and this villain that is not the head honcho, but they show up in a lot of my books. They're even in my Bear Claw tales. They're hunter vamps, and it's a type of vampire who has basically lost the will to live, and they lose like every shred of humanity that they have. And when that happens, an evil witch, a dark witch, can bind these hunter vamps to them, and then basically they use them like an attack dog, and they can set them after anyone.
Wow.
And they're pretty formidable, obviously, having all the strength and power of a vampire, just they're no longer in control. So they're kind of really nasty, snarly, gooey creatures. And yeah, they're just they're yucky. So actually I have a good vampire who basically is trying to get the werewolves to cooperate with him and to turn over the hunter vamps instead of just vanquishing them, because he wants to rehabilitate them. So we'll see. We'll see.
That's interesting. Good vamps. For all the authors who, next question, for all the authors who write about dragons, the question is, do your dragons' colors always denote specific powers? Are there specific colors for specific powers? Does anybody want to, show of hands, want to go first? Or I'm just going to pick Millie. All right.
Well, this takes me back to that same series I was talking about before, the Dragon Mates. Their colors denoted their powers, and then they would change as they mated. They would take on a second color that would allow them to show off that new power that they gained by being mated.
Oh, interesting. I like that. Anybody else want to respond? Or okay, Julia. Oh, you're just on mute. Can't hear you, Julia. I'm just going to move to.
I figured it out. Sorry.
That's okay.
So yeah, in my Dragon Guard series, the dragons all breathe fire. That's a standard operating procedure for us. But depending on their ancestry, where they came from, all of that, they have other powers. Like some, their mothers were witches, or some, their mothers were other animals, or some, they were just different dragons. And that is what makes up the color of their scale. So you're not just a red dragon, you could be a ruby dragon or a red gold dragon or whatever. And all of that is something different. And then, yeah, I've never done I think I've read Millie's series, and it's fantastic the way the dragons go together and their powers combine and all of that. That is a fantastic concept. And mine I also have berserker dragons, that were given the power of the berserker by the goddess Morgana. And so in those, they have a different dragon form that they take that stands on two legs, and their wings are smaller, and they're 10 feet tall, and berserkers. They literally
Go berserk.
Out. Go berserk. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think, again, like I said, you can do so many things with dragons, and that's, or with any of them, really. That's the coolest part of what we do, in my opinion. So.
Fantastic. Ellis, did you have your hand up for that one or not?
I did.
Okay.
My original dragon story, I don't remember. It's been so long. I don't remember tying that into his color. I do remember that there were different color dragons, and some were good and some were bad. But my new series that I'm writing, they are all... So a clan of dragons owns an island where they have a business serving humans who want to go on adventures. So when I was way younger than I am now, I went away for like a week to West Virginia, and we went mountain climbing and kayaking and jumped out of an airplane and kind of did all of these adventure things. So I put this all on an island. It's run by dragons. So I'm leaning into my witchy roots and pulling out my elementals. So the blue dragon is the water dragon, and he runs the kayaking and, like deep sea diving areas of it. And then you have the earth dragon, who's a bit more green and mottled, and he runs like the mountain climbing and the bouldering and stuff like that, and kind of playing into both of those, because I really like writing witches. I also like writing these dragons. So I'm just going to marry them together and have a little fun with that kind of thing and focus on those. This is the one who likes to fly. So he's going to be the base jumping. He runs the base jumping area of the camp and stuff like that. So yeah, you might as well play with it.
Why not? It's creativity and fun, right?
Yeah.
Thank you. Does anybody else want to chime in on that, or no? Okay, I'm going to switch gears a little bit. I just have a question. You guys have all talked about why you love writing dragons or wolves, and I'm just curious as to what's the biggest challenge? What's the hardest part about writing these characters or these particular shifters? I'm just going to go round and round. Terri, would you like to comment?
I think for me, it's to try to marry their dragon part with their human part. Like, try to make sure that I address both. Because, I mean, they're not just all 100% dragon. They're not just all 100% human. So there's that play, that not necessarily confusion, but just that interplay between their human part and their dragon part. And so sometimes I find that I'll be writing and it's like, oh, they never shifted. I'm like 2/3 of the way through the story and they never shifted. Or I'll be like, oh crap, they're in their dragon form for 6 chapters. So I need to go back and try to, that's what I find hard, is just trying to remember to balance it out. So
is it a fine balance between, like, do you find that you have to put them in specific forms for a certain amount of time? Like, you have to switch them back and forth?
No, I don't go like there's not a set, like it has to be 10 pages or 20%, but I just, to me, it's important. I try to make sure that my shifters, like, they're humans who shift. They're not necessarily shifters who are humans. And so I kind of like approaching it that way, because then I can do more of the mental and the emotional, and to me, it just makes more sense. So I don't have a set guideline. I just kind of go with my gut says to do.
Okay, thank you. Godiva, how about yourself? What's the most challenging thing about writing either the dragons or the wolves?
I mean, that's actually a really difficult question, and I've been thinking about it, and I'm not entirely sure, because, and I don't want to sound like silly saying this, but I just kind of find it comes out really easily, to be honest. It's just something that I, whenever I first started writing my wolves, everything just kind of came out like how I wanted their society, how I wanted this, how I wanted that. And I guess my wolves are more, they're more wolf first before human. But I guess the hardest part about writing them in general is just trying to meet reader expectations, but still surprise them. Because there are definitely things that if you're writing wolf shifters or dragon shifters, there are, these sets of things that they definitely want. But at the same time, you don't want to feel like you're writing fan fiction of whoever the most popular wolf shifter is in, at the time or anything like that. We don't want to feel like we're copying somebody else. But at the same time, you don't want to be trying so hard to be unique that you lose sight of what the readers want and what you want to write.
So it's about keeping it fresh then, just keeping it constantly fresh in some ways.
Right. Keeping it fresh without losing what makes the genre fun. So that, there are readers where I can't think of any reader who's like, oh, I'm only going to read wolf shifters from this one author and I don't care about all the others. No, they want to read all of them.
Yeah.
So you have to be able to cater to them while still standing out from everybody else. And, wolf shifters, dragon shifters, they've become so popular at this point that I think that's one of those things where if I get a review where someone's like, oh my gosh, this is a new take on wolves or anything, I'm just like, oh, thank you. I can go to sleep tonight, Honestly, I think that's the hardest part for me.
Thank you. Ellis, how about yourself? What's challenging about writing either dragons or wolves? What do you find?
I agree with Godiva. It is just, it's a very flooded market. There's a lot of worlds already built in it. And while you want to stay fresh and you want to stay new, you want to meet those reader expectations. I don't want to step on anybody's toes. Like, it's a really weird, once you kind of get into it and get deep into it, like, there's just a line that you have to stay on. I have a pretty strict rule when I'm writing paranormal. I don't read paranormal because I don't want to accidentally pick up something about somebody else's world. I would feel horrible if I did that, if I accidentally, like, this got into my brain that, oh, I'm going to have a necromancer who can control vampires because they're dead. Well, somebody's already done that. I can't remember who is that did that. Was it Sherilyn Kenyon that did that, or Patricia Briggs? Anyway, one of those did that. And so when I brought in necromancers, I was like, well, I can't have them control vampires because that's kind of already been done. And that was really unique for that author to do.
Iona Andrews.
What was that?
I think it's Iona Andrews who does that.
There you go. Yes, that's right. I knew it was one of the big ones. So I couldn't have them. Like, there's just some things that are so unique and so breakout that you just can't recopy that. We all kind of do, if they shift, do they have their clothes when they're done or not? Do they, shift to the full moon or not? Like, there are little things that you can kind of, that's just standard and everybody plays that game. And then there are things that are so unique that you just really have to let that breathe. Like, that's somebody else's zone and you just let them have their thing. Perfect. So that's a little tricky.
Perfect. Thank you. CD, how about yourself? What's challenging about writing dragons or wolves?
So my dragon series, the Fault Clan Tales, in that series, these dragons were in servitude to another dragon for 500 years before they got out into modern society. Yeah, there's a whole backstory. But so what I found difficult just about writing the series was how to bring them into contemporary times and have it be genuine. Because, if they've been stuck somewhere for 500 years, they're not going to come out, talking like us and, just ready to jump into things. So it was, for me, like, that part, just the logic of it was a bit challenging. And I had to kind of work through a whole storyline before I even started to write the books.
Right.
But the magical side, the shifting side, I mean, that stuff, I just love that stuff. So I don't find that challenging. I really get excited about it and I want to do it. The werewolves, the wolf shifters, they are pretty modern, even though I think I wrote one. He wasn't a main character, but he was in my urban fantasy. He was a 1,000-year-old wolf shifter, but he was kind of funny too and a little crazy. So he was fun to write. But yeah, just how do you get them to be involved with regular people, with the human world, and how do you kind of mesh that? To me, that's just the most interesting part of this.
Okay, thank you. Julia, I'll go down to you. What's the most challenging part? Don't mean to put you on the spot.
Wake up here. No. For me, it was all about deciding the characteristics that I wanted them to have. So I knew dragons. I wanted them to be loyal and fierce and honorable, and all the things that we think our alpha males are. They are most definitely alpha, but their women are as well. I mean, and I think for me that was important too, to make sure that through it all, it was a partnership, whether she be human or she be supernatural. And so, I also wanted my dragons to be old, the men themselves to be hundreds of years old, but not look it. And they have been paired, their souls have been paired with their dragons forever. So, having been that long paired with somebody, you guys are probably tight and you probably share a whole lot together. So, those things were important to me to make sure that, no, everybody's not the same. They've always lived among humans. They've always been the guardians of humans, but the dragon part has stayed to the background. So, that was the part for me. I wanted to make sure. Some, I've had some come out that they found there was a whole clan we found that we thought was dead, and that what she was talking about, they didn't know what cell phones were or TVs or things like that. So writing that wasn't hard. I mean, it just was a whole nother level that I hadn't thought about until I got to those books. So I think for me, it's all about making sure that I stay true to each character. So if some of the dragons talk to the men in their heads. So I have older snarky ass dragons that whip them and call these 400-year-old men lad. And then, I have some that don't talk a lot and mostly grumble and gruff and the old nasty men, the old grumpy old men kind of thing. So yeah, I think that for me is what's important. I want to make sure that I stay true to each character. The tagline for mine is, fate will not be denied and the universe doesn't make mistakes. So, she knew what she was doing, the universe, when she paired this man with this dragon soul. So somewhere in there, they complement each other when they're exact opposites. I don't write a lot of wolves, but I do basically the same thing with them as well. All my shifters. I like the big guy shifters. And
perfect. Thank you, Julia. Millie, over to you. What is the challenging part for you when writing dragons or wolves, whichever one you want to pick?
I don't know that there's anything that's particularly challenging. I mean, I think them having to, since this is dragons or any shifter, they recognize their fated mate, when they see them. It's probably the most challenging part is now having this character who already knows what they want, and maybe they're made as a human, having to now, make this person fall in love with you so that, they can get their happily ever after because they already know this is a person for them. And then, have to go through that in the story with a realistic, in some sense, that this guy, this person who doesn't know about sense or any of that, needs to learn about, the fact that you are their, soulmate or whatever you want to call it. And they don't believe in that, So
Yeah.
that's probably, where I try to, even though these are fated mates, bring in the realism of, well, this person is a human, so you need to treat them like they don't have what you have, they don't know what you know, so they need to go through the same courtship as, two regular people, in some sense. At some point, it might not be at the beginning. They might start out, doing things backwards, but whatever, as long as we get them to a level of where both parties feel the same way. And I think that's where I probably struggle more, because I want to make sure that the reader doesn't feel that, at the end of the story, somebody doesn't feel completely in love with the other person.
Right, right. While I still have you, Millie, I just have a quick question. One of the other authors has asked, and I'll come to everyone else to just see what their take is, but what happens with your shifters when they wear watches and jewelry and they switch? What happens to when they shift, sorry, what happens to the watches and jewelry and other stuff? Does it magically disappear?
You know what's funny? I very, very rarely write watches and jewelry, which is funny, because I know clothes just like are gone. But the times that I have written it, they'll take it off and put it somewhere so that they don't. So I guess they either take it off or it's destroyed at some point.
Fair enough. Does anybody else want to chime in on that? Ellis, let's go with you. What happens to the watches and jewelry?
So my wolves strip, or their clothes just get destroyed. They end up naked running through the woods. And I've done it now in 2 books when I've written in Dragon Shifters, that they're so jealous of the dragons because the dragon's clothes shifts with them. So all the jewelry, they get to have the watch, they get to look and do everything like every other kind of human person because their clothes shift with them. And when I first wrote it, I didn't realize what I was writing in. I just knew that I saw that dragon shifting into his dragon form, then coming back human, and his clothes were perfectly pressed, perfectly in place, like some kind of, model on a runway. So the clothes, it's just part of their magic. It goes with them and comes back. Whereas the wolves, it's out there in the woods somewhere, and they're butt naked. So
like that. CD, I think I saw your hand go up earlier.
Yeah. I was just gonna say, in my new release I just had, Breaking Sass, the other day, they're lion shifters, and he's also royalty. And it's interesting because when he's in his, position as Prince of the Pride, he has a long chain that he wears that is long enough to accommodate a shift to a lion. So when he does shift, it would just kind of be more like a choker, but it's sort of like his status, and it's magically imbued so it wouldn't break, and it would, just sort of, and he's the only one who would do that. But other than that, I don't have shifters wear a lot of jewelry for that reason.
Okay. Does anybody else want to comment on that? All right, Godiva.
So I think it's interesting, and maybe I'm sure that I know that all of our wolves are in kind of different social circumstances. But I made a pretty conscious decision to not have my wolves wearing a lot of jewelry, and they don't really have a need for watches. They're very bare bones. They don't worry about fashion. My wolves are out in the woods. They're living in cabins and trailers, and they wear jeans and flannel. And I basically made the decision that since they rip through their clothes, that the only thing that might stay is maybe a large pair of hoop earrings, but I can't imagine that they would be particularly comfortable. But it's not like my wolves aren't going into town to get their ears pierced. Tattoos stay underneath the fur. And I've only had to think about this because dark times are ahead, people. So if you kill a wolf shifter in their wolf form, and if you would just hypothetically shave them, the tattoo would be underneath. But this does introduce an interesting dilemma, because I do have in one book where Call is caught, and he's got this like intense collar on him in his human form, and it's not a normal metal. And he's sitting there thinking like, so if I try to shift, either this collar is going to pop off or my head's going to pop off. So so this is just something that I've definitely thought of. And yeah, no, jewelry generally would not survive, just like the clothes.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Julia, did you want to comment or no? Okay, moving along. I actually have a quick question for all of you. What is your funniest scene that you've had with your dragon or wolf shifter? What's the funniest scene? All right, Millie, you've got some really good ones too, so I'm curious to see which one you pick.
Wow, yeah, I definitely do have a lot of fun scenes. I think my favorite probably has to be from Winter's Captive, where she's running through the woods from two wolf shifters, and they suddenly shift into men that are naked, very naked men in front of her. And the whole time she's thinking how she's gonna die because she watches a lot of scary movies, and so this is how she's gonna go out, because she's out of shape and these guys are hot and she shouldn't be looking at their junk, and it's just so much fun. Like, I had so much fun writing that scene, you know. Yeah, that's my favorite. Probably one of my favorites. I have a lot of them, but that's definitely up there.
I love that scene. Ellis, how about yourself? What is the funniest scene that you've written with your wolf or dragon shifters?
Oh gosh, I don't even know. I'm like racking my head. My Mates and Macaron series is all like rom-com style PNR, and there's a dragon in there. Sugar Dragon is the book, and I'm trying to think, and I'm pretty sure it has something to do with the heroines all own it's three sisters. They own a bakery, which is why it's Mates and Macarons. And there's a long running joke about the middle sister and her dragon mate and the sex in the kitchen, and why there's no longer allowed to be sex in the kitchen at the bakery. So I'm gonna have to go with something like that. I can't think of anything really super specific, but like the second that you said it, I was kind of like, it's the sex in the kitchen, but I don't think I've ever actually written the scene. I just keep implying that they're not allowed to have sex in the kitchen because of the dragon shifter. So I don't think I've ever told the story of why that is, though.
Well, when you do, we'd love to hear it. CD, how about yourself? What's the funniest out of scene that you've written with your dragon or wolf shifter?
So I'm in the same boat. I can't recall exactly what was said, but in my Fall Clan Tales, in the Dragon's Valentine, there is the eldest brother, because it's about 4 brothers and there are 4 books in the series. And, here he is finally free after 500 years, and he's flying over the New World because, hey, why not? And, he gets this sort of feeling that, hey, my mate is down there, and he lands, and where is he? He's at the Jersey Shore, because that's, the place to be. And he walks into a bar, of course, and his werewolf shifter female mate is a bartender, and the whole scene is just him talking and her being snarky, and he doesn't understand a word she's saying. And it's just all this miscommunication where he thinks she's agreed to be his mate, and he's like, okay, throwing her over his shoulder, like, let's go. And she's like, what the hell are you doing? So it was pretty funny, and it was fun to write, and I did like that one.
That sounds like a fantastic scene. Terri, how about yourself? What's the funniest scene that you've written about your dragons?
I like to do puns. I'm a huge lover of puns. So I have a kitchen scene like Ellis was talking about. It's actually not a dragon, but it's a bear shifter and a falcon shifter. And I do a lot of play on poking, and they're cooking in the kitchen with a knife, and their wit is really sharp. and just cutting this kind of, play on the idea of sex and the cooking, and how honestly cooking's really can be so sexual. So it's a lot about that. But then as far as the dragons go, I have a scene with a dragon who is like the king of the dragons at this point, and he thinks he's like the baddest ass that's out there. His ego is probably like 10 times bigger than he is, but he has to go into hiding for a bit, and he's really bored. So there's a mermaid who is there, who is a weapons expert, and she's like, well, let's go spar outside. And so every time he gets really tough and starts to, my dragons can sometimes like partially shift. They're not fully shift, so they're partially shift. She'll use her skill with water, and she'll douse him, and he gets wet. And every time he tries to, because he doesn't think she's a tough fighter, and she turns out she's totally kicking his ass. And at the very end, he's like all ready to go to pounce on her, and he finds out all the trees and the limbs from this forest come and wrap around his leg and just pull his pants down and pull him down, because she's also half druid. And so he didn't know that. So she was getting him with water, and then at the very end, she gets him with the trees, and then so like totally puts him in his place.
Oh, I love that. I love a strong heroine. It's always fantastic when they go head to head with the alpha. Godiva, how about yourself? What is the funniest scene that you found either your dragons or wolves in?
Okay, so honestly, my wolves aren't very funny. Anything that happens, if anything, might be like very dry humor. But it's definitely, I can't think of a single scene which anyone's ever gonna really laugh at in my wolves. It might be like a okay. It's just because of the tone, it's just very, it's not a glamorous series, it's I don't know, it's something else. The funniest of my scenes honestly come in the books that I write for Millie. But I've honestly only recently embraced humor, and here's why. I'm not really good with humor. I'm very much the kind of person who makes a joke that falls flat and then has to sit there like, laughing at myself. So like my white whale honestly is like that rom-com sort of style comedy. I'm so bad at it. But I'm trying, and I've been trying in my Millie books, because I feel like the readers are more susceptible to humor, because Millie is so great at writing comedy, that I want to try that. So I don't really have any funny books, like funny scenes, like with my wolves, especially. When I wrote my my last dragons, I can't think of anything really funny. Anything that was super funny actually didn't make it into the book. It ended up on the chopping floor. Like the fact that my black dragon, he's so moody and grumpy that his pet was this it was a beta fish, and he would just sit there and glare at this little beta fish in its little aquarium. But like I could keep it in the book because it just made, like it was just so out there and everything. But that was probably like the funniest thing that was going on with my dragons.
That's actually pretty funny, to be honest. If that's a grumpy guy looking at a tiny beta fish, I mean, the thought of it is actually quite humorous.
Yeah, so it was this idea of the only one with the balls to glare back at him. So.
Thank you. Julie, I don't think I got to you yet, have I? No. What's the funniest scene that you've written, or the one that you think is funny about dragons or wolves?
I try to add a lot of humor in there. I think I'm funny. I'm probably not, but I think I'm funny. It comes from my dad. He was hilarious. But in Her Mad Dragon, Maddox is one of the oldest. He's almost 1,000 years old, and so when they find their fated mate and they're making love, actually getting it. You know what I'm saying? It's like better than ever for them with their fated mate. Ellis is like, oh my God, she just said that. Anyway, so yeah, Maddox was all in, you know what I'm saying? And it was that moment, and fire. He breathed fire and burnt the wall down in Callista's house. So yeah, that's one of them. But stuff like that happens all the time. And I have a couple rom-com series, paranormal romance rom-com series that, they're just, I mean, one of them's named Southern Fried Sass. So there you have it. Yeah, I like humor to be in there. And that's some of my favorite reviews from people are when they'll say, I cried and I laughed and I sat on the edge of my seat and oh my God, she's so funny. And I was like, yes, all of them. So yeah, for me, I like to read books where it's all the emotions. You know, I want to give them all the feels, all of them. So I want to give people all the feels too. So
knee deep and breathing fire will do that.
There you go. That's what I'm talking about.
And we are at 5:30, so I'm just going to do a quick round we're nearing the end, and I just wanted to go around and ask you guys, each one of you, what you're working on now, what can readers expect from you, what can they go to the store and look for? CD, you want to go first? What's coming out? What's new? What projects are you working on?
Okay, I had a new release yesterday in Millie Taiden's Sassy World.
Yay!
Hey, Millie, Breaking Sass. So that one just came out. It's on KU, so you can grab that on Amazon. And I have another release coming next Friday called Polar Outbreak, which is about my Polar Bear Shifter series. I'm looking forward to that as well.
Fantastic. Thank you. Godiva, how about yourself? What's coming out? What's new? What's next?
Okay, so oh man, my schedule is kind of crazy. My next wolf shifter is going to be coming in some point in the fall.
Okay.
And that's going to be in an anthology. So I'm really, so that's going to be new. It's going to be a bit shorter than my usual work. Other than that, I do have another Night Wolves book planned for later this year. That's supposed to, it kind of goes back to that whole idea of like villains. So this book is Night Forgiven, and it's actually the person who's pretty much the villain in my second Night Wolves book, and kind of explaining like her side of the story and why she did the shitty things that she did. And it's taking me a while because reader feedback was like, no, she could never have a happy ending. And I'm like, too bad, because she was always slated to have one. And then later this year in November, I'm doing a collab with dragons in Millie's world. And it's going to be called Once More with Dragons. And we're introducing a new hidden race of dragons that's going to be coming out to Pastor Jerry. So it's really exciting.
Oh, it sounds exciting. Thank you. Ellis, how about yourself? What's coming out next? Any new projects?
So I just had a release, I think last week or the week before. It's called Reindeer Ripple. It's in my Mates and Macarons series. So it's kind of PNR comedy. It was supposed to be out in December. That's why it's reindeer, but pandemics. So it just came out. So that's out. That's a new release. All those books are in KU. So they're quick, they're funny, they're each standalone. You can start at Candy Wolf though and work your way through them if you want to go in any kind of order. And they're fun. Next up is I'm working on my Adventure Dragons. So the first book will be called Crank, which is a term in whitewater rafting and kayaking, like sea kayaking. Yeah, that's it. I don't have a date for that yet because, again, pandemic. So my brain is a little broken. I do still have a full-time job. I am an essential worker in an industry. I'm lucky enough to work from home. But that's a gigantic strain and homeschooling, and my husband's home working from home as well. So writing is backseat. But hopefully this year I'll get at least the first two out because they're super fun, and it seems like a good kind of escape read to do.
Perfect. Thank you very much. And thank you for all you do as well. Julia, how about yourself? What's new? What do you have coming out?
June is a big month for me. I have Sworn Protector in Millie's FPU world. I have That Mule's Got a Kick. And Sworn Protector is the Dragon Guard, one of my dragons, and it will continue the story that was started in Savage Protector, which came out last month. That Mule's Got a Kick is part of my Maidens of Mayhem, and it is romantic comedy PNR, and it's in Robin Peterman's Magic and Mayhem world. And then another dragon comes out in June, Dragon Take the Wheel. And I'm blessed enough that Christine Gorri designed the cover for Sworn Protector and Dragon Take the Wheel for me. She's fabulous, fabulous. So yeah, I have lots coming in June, so I'm tapping these fingers off right now to get everything edited and in and all that. But yeah, so I am so excited. I love what I do, and so yeah.
We are all excited to see your books in June.
Oh, thanks. Everything I write is in KU, except anything that's in Robin's world, but everything else is in KU. And so check them out. Some are long, some are short, some are here, but I hope you enjoy them all. Thanks for having me, for hanging out with us.
Thank you, Julia. Millie, how about yourself? It already sounds like there's a lot happening in Millie's world. So, what do you have?
Let's see. I have so I just had a release called Wolfing Her Down in my PDA, book number 26 in the Paranormal Dating Agency.
Yay!
Yeah, and let's see, next release, third of the Casters and Claw series, Spellstruck in Salem. Then we'll have their Wild Sea, their third in the Wintervale Packs series, a reverse harem. And I'll probably do another PDA right after that before the next Casters and Claws. So yeah, pretty busy. I'm right now I'm working on the fourth book of a new series that'll come out at the end of the year. Start coming out at the end of the year or possibly beginning of next year. And just lots of hoping to bring in a couple of new series and write some books and some older series like the Sassy Maids and
Yay! Excellent. Sounds exciting. Thank you. Terri, how about yourself? Any new projects?
Yeah, well, I just sat down this afternoon and kind of planned out the rest of my year. And if I do what I have planned, I've got 6 or 7 books that I'd like to get out before the end of the year. I've got them all outlined and ready to go. So it's just button seat time that I need to find. I just released my first PDA at the end of last month about 2 horse shifters. And it's all about a mating auction that this group of people are using to raise money for a scholarship. And they bring Jerry in to make sure that everybody gets mated up with who they're supposed to get mated up with. So I'm hoping to get the second book out in that, as well as go back to the Dragon Sassies that we released earlier this year. Regina was the queen of the island, and I'm really excited about telling her story. And then I'd also like to do the one more FPU before the end of the year. I have some projects of my own that I'm working on. I'm doing a duology with a woman warrior who fights essentially all paranormal creatures, but of course she falls in love with one, and so she has to decide, am I going to stay true to my calling or am I going to stay true to my heart? And so I'm excited about that one too.
That sounds exciting. Thank you very much. I want to again thank everybody for joining us today, and thank all of our authors for coming out today to have a chat with us. Thank you. And to all our viewers, just a reminder to for more information on RTC or to be notified, please subscribe to our channel down below, and you'll be informed for the next time we're going to be going live again. And thank you to our viewers again and our authors, and a special thank you to Jess Ripley for doing this. Thank you very much. Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
Night. Thank you, Ludvica.
You're welcome. Bye, guys.
Bye bye.
Bye.